Welcome all. New year and a new episode of the Etienne Live podcast. It's a great pleasure to see you all. It's the fourth episode that we're going to do today, and I think we will piggyback on where we sort of left. If you remember, those of you who were here, we were actually at the Santa Lucia at the time. We were celebrating a saint of lights that came in, and we were going back to my pagan past as a good Swede, and about a girl that's made herself blind to avoid a marriage and all that. That's a long story. We're on another saint today, and it's Saint Valentine. Actually, it's kind of funny. I was reading up here before, and because I realized there was a saint. And there's also a sort of a blindness theme here, which is something that these podcasts will try to take away the shades and open up for new sights. So we start with a blind man, so we can get enlightened afterwards. And Saint Valentine, the first day he appeared was actually in the 5th century in Rome, and he apparently became sanctified because he cured blind people. And the connection with what we usually see, love and friendship and all that sort of thing, is from France. It's in the 14th century when all of a sudden you start making the connection with young people trying to date and to get together and so forth. So 14th of February, to most people celebrated almost all over the world. And I just remember myself that since I spent quite some time in Brazil, it's actually the 12th of June that is o Dia dos Namorados, the day of the lovers, the Lovers' Day. But with that said, we want to invite you all to a good spirit and a good conversation. And today we have the fourth episode, and we have my colleague here at the UNECE, Jakob Fexer, as the moderator. And he will spend a good time talking to Bojana Femić-Radosavović from Montenegro. And we are going to do, building what we already, just picking up where we were again. We talked about transformation and what that means in general terms, as we're talking about transformative innovation, what were transformations. We had a conversation on strategic learning after the TOS ICP. Then we talked about transformative innovation and transforming mature industries, where we had Elizabeth as a moderator and Göran Nyström from Ovako Steel talking about how we changed the steel industry. Now we're going to have another outlook, and the outlook here is to discuss what this whole concept of transformative innovation and how innovation can actually transform societies at large. How does it relate to another type of economies? We're talking that also is part of our member sphere at UNECE. So we're very happy to have Bojana here. Sits in Montenegro. You will have a chance to introduce yourselves. And I'll just leave over the floor to Jakob.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome to you all, and thank you for spending Valentine's Day with us. We feel very, very special. I'm the moderator, and so it's my job to also make sure we end on time so you can all then move on to more romantic endeavors later on in the day. So yeah, our aim is really to shift away from the focus on OECD countries, which was predominantly the focus, I think, in the first 3 episodes, and to explore a little bit what innovation and transformative innovation means in a different context, in the context of transition economies, with a case study of the Western Balkans, and maybe even a further zoom into Montenegro, which is one of the economies of this group of countries. And before I let our guest introduce herself, I just want to say that I have a bit of a sentimental weakness for this region, because when I started my career at the OECD in 2006, I worked on this region. I was part of a young team that coordinated the Stability Pact for Southeast Europe, which was established to to give cooperation and stability back to this region that just emerged from a long and terrible war. And then, just after I joined, Montenegro had its referendum on independence, and then a few months later, Bulgaria and Romania joined the EU. So it was lots of pieces were moving, and even since I haven't worked there, a lot of things have changed. And it's a region with great food, great people, great hospitality. And just to end my introduction, I want to give one quote. People say it's the region with the most history per square meter, because it's has such a rich heritage of Greek heritage, Roman heritage, Venetian, Ottoman, Austro-Hungarian, etc., etc. But enough about me. I'm so delighted to do this together with Bojana, who I've got to know a little bit in recent months, and very excited to do this podcast about this region that I love. Bojana, over to you. Please introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll start a discussion.
Thanks, Jacob. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this. As you said at the very beginning, almost all the episodes, not only episodes of this podcast, but also the majority of the topics about innovation are about innovation in richer countries, in OECD countries. And sometimes transition economies are not part of that stories, and we have some interesting stories also to share. So it is really great to have this opportunity to be today here with you. So about my introduction, maybe let's start with that Valentine's spirit. So I would say that I'm passionately in love with innovation, with marketing, with communications, and with teaching and learning. I have a PhD in economics, and I have been teaching for more than 15 years at the university. And I still work at the university because that is my first and maybe the greatest love of all. So I can't let it go. My current role is I'm executive director of the Innovation Fund of Montenegro. That is a newly established institution. We are only 2 years old, and I had that privilege of being in this role from the very beginning, from the establishment of the fund. So I was involved in all those roles of gathering the team, creating the first policies, setting up the institution, creating the support programs, working closely with ministry that is dealing with innovation policy in order to make something that is good for our ecosystem. So that is something I'm proud of, because it is at the same time very challenging, very exciting, and very interesting to be a part of it.
Thanks so much, Bojana. I'll start with the question that is on everybody's minds. Is Valentine's Day a thing in your region, in the Western Balkans?
You can see that I'm wearing red today, right? So I'm passing the right message about Valentine's. In our region, it is becoming from year to year more and more interesting. It is not part of Montenegrin tradition. We are a mainly Orthodox country, and it is not part of our tradition and culture to have a date such a Valentine's Day. But we are following all the trends from the rest of the Europe and the world, so it is becoming a thing. And but there are some arguments about that, and we have divided sides. That is maybe a bit of a stereotype about the people from Western Balkans, right? That we always have two positions about the same topic. So it's about Valentine's as well.
Great, thanks, Bojana. And maybe for those listeners that are not familiar with that part of Europe, a couple of words about what do we understand by the Western Balkans? Why is this an important region? Why are we not talking about the Balkans? Why are we not talking about Southeast Europe? And also, you're from Montenegro, but I'm sure that you have connections to many other of the economies of the Western Balkans. Maybe you can explain why, because I think that then gives an idea of what this type of region is like and the interconnectedness between the different economies.
Yeah, sure. We are all very small economies, so we are pretty connected. And in the rest of the world, we are known for some as Western Balkans, for some as Balkans, as you said. And sometimes they only see us as a part of Southeast region, Southeast Europe, because we are so small and we are so connected. For example, I was born and raised in Montenegro. My mother is from Bosnia and Herzegovina. My mother-in-law lives in Serbia. And there are so many families that are like this one because we are all connected. We have all pretty similar cultures. We share almost the same language. So we are very, very connected. When we speak about business, it can be said like that for the businesses as well. For example, when we were forming the Innovation Fund in Montenegro, there were already established funds, similar funds in Serbia and in North Macedonia. So in our region, it is pretty normal to have a very close collaboration in order to make something similar in other country of the region. So we used, for example, a lot of experiences from the region, mainly from the Innovation Fund from Serbia, in order to skip some first phases that are tough in the development of the institution and to form institution pretty quickly. So yeah, we are very, very, very connected and close to each other.
And when we look at the economic structure of these economies a little bit, if you look at some of the recent economic studies, there's quite a lot of quite broad consensus that these countries are facing what is called a convergence gap in terms of living standards. So then they're not yet internationally competitive, and they lack factors and institutions for long-term productivity. To what extent can innovation fill this gap? What is the importance of innovation for this region today?
Yeah, sure. When we talk about our region, the baseline is like this. Average income per capita in Western Balkan economies varies between 27 and 50% of EU average income, for example. Then we have economic convergence and socio-economic and political reforms that are not advancing fast enough at this moment. And also, all of this affects the pace of the accession process to the EU, which is something that every country from our region aspires. So that is the baseline that we start from. And when we look at like that, yes, we could definitely say that innovation is probably something that can narrow this gap and that can be used for that. Because there are so many things that comes with innovation that can benefit to the smaller countries, to transition economies like the Western Balkan economies. So, for example, with innovation, we all know that there comes increase of productivity, and that is something that we really need here in Western Balkans because we don't have so many resources, and we really need to have a strong increase in productivity in order to make our economy better and more efficient. Then we all are thinking a lot about attracting foreign investments. That is something that is desperately needed in this region. And innovation can be really a part of the story that can be interesting for all the investors that should come to the region. You know, you already, Jakob, mentioned when you talk about Montenegro, for example, you think about great climate, great culture, great food, people that are very, they know how to be good hosts and things like that. But we need something more in order to have really good investors that are investing in the right sectors that are needed for us. That is also the other opportunity that we need a knowledge-based economy, because we can't rely only on some low productivity sectors. We can't rely on that, and we see that innovation is crucial for that, to transform our economy into knowledge-based economy that can be really open to some other to some other opportunities. But when you think about that, we are very well aware of the fact that you can't base all of that only on innovation by itself, because we need, for example, the big problem that we face here is that we need better infrastructure, for example. That is something that is needed in order to have more foreign investments in this region. So we need to think about that. We need to think about, for example, promoting a culture of not only innovation, but entrepreneurship. You know, in our families, it is not so it is not a tradition to be entrepreneur. In our countries, for example, even today, when I speak with my students, they are students of economics, for example, and when you ask them what is their dream job, the majority of them are they are talking about public sector. They are not thinking yet about some new innovative businesses. They are not thinking about their own businesses. They are not thinking about startups. So those are some things that also should be changed in the future.
Yeah, and when I worked on the Western Balkans, in addition to this desire for stability amongst young people, there was also, it was not uncommon that there was a strong negative bias towards successful entrepreneurs and innovators, because they were perceived as having obtained an unfair advantage. And so it's great to hear that you are amongst many other people working on changing this conception and this prejudice. Bojana, can you maybe talk about a few innovations that have come out from the Western Balkans? Of course, we all know Nikola Tesla, and I think he was born or grew up actually just across the border. I mean, very close to Montenegro.
Very close.
But I think it would be interesting for our audience to hear, you know, what are some of the things that have emerged from the Western Balkans? What is, in addition to, of course, the tourism and the landscapes and the food, what are the Western Balkans famous for?
Yeah, there are some interesting sectors that are emerging now. For example, in Serbia, we have a company called Nordeus that they are very famous, I think, in the global landscape, because they created that mobile game Top 11. Be a soccer manager. They are very famous for that. Also, we like, even though Croatia is now part of EU, we like to think about Croatia as a part of the Western Balkan culture. So I'm sure that
iPhone,
yeah, some microphone. It's okay.
Go on.
I'm sure that. Yeah, I'm sure that everybody knows now about Rimac, Mate Rimac, and Rimac Automobili, the company from Croatia that is very famous in the whole world. And the good thing about the region is when you have somebody like Rimac, for example, thinking about totally new and innovative ways he can pioneer in one industry like automotive industry, for example, then you have others in the region thinking about similar things in different setups. So, for example, now we have some company that is very interested in Montenegro in making new like Rimac for boats. He's promoting himself for the moment like he's going to be like Rimac for boats. So that is good that we are very connected. We know success stories from other countries, and we try to use that knowledge in order to create something new in our countries.
Yeah, so these demonstration effects are extremely important, and it's interesting to hear that they have an effect across borders in this region. Their impact is not limited to individual economies themselves. And Bojana, what is unique about the region of the Western Balkans from an innovation ecosystem perspective? what are some of the features that are attractive also to foreign investors? And what is the reason why some of these impressive innovations have happened, in your opinion?
Yes, we as the region, there are so many things that we share among our economies, but also there are some differences between us. But I think that something that is important for us is a good, like a strategic geographical position of the Western Balkans. So that position makes us stronger in the eyes of the others, because it is really very important that we are important, like target for the access to EU, to the Middle East. So that is something that is strong about us. Also, for example, in the past, we had a very good educational system. So we have very strong engineers, for example, people that are educated in STEM. So we had that very, very strong educational ecosystem, but now we are facing that we need to innovate that as well. And that is something that is, we have a huge had for years, a huge brain drain, because we have, as I said, a lot of very good students here in Montenegro, but they are going abroad for getting additional knowledge, because they don't need and they don't have opportunities to study some modern things that are really important at the market today. And we are facing now, I think, one of the biggest challenges for all the countries from Western Balkans is actually to make them stay. For example, in Montenegro, we now have some trends that young people are coming back to Montenegro in order to make something here and to show that it is possible to make something from a small country like Montenegro is, and to have global recognition for that. So they are coming back in order to try it, but we still need to work a lot on that. Also, we are very famous for something that we are not so proud to be famous of, that we have low labor costs here in Montenegro. So a lot of companies, multinational companies, are outsourcing some of their activities to countries from the Western Balkan region. And that can be something that is we are not so happy to be recognized only for that. We should be recognized for more things. Also, for example, in Montenegro, we have one very good tax system. We have tax incentives for R&D and innovation that are one of the maybe best in the Europe. So a lot of companies that want to invest in R&D and want to invest in innovation are coming here in order to use that tax incentives. That is also something that is maybe our region and Montenegro is famous for.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a great overview. And of course, you also have the euro as your only legal tender in Montenegro. And while there's been a brain drain, there's also been an influx of foreigners in Montenegro. And I don't know if we'll have time to go into the implications of this for the innovation ecosystem, but you have very large Russian, Turkish, and Ukrainian communities now in Montenegro. Significant percentages of the overall population. But given that we only have about 5, 6, 7 minutes for our discussion, Bojana, before we open the floor for questions, I wanted to maybe talk about two things. One, the concept of transformative innovation, and then also a little bit about your innovation fund and the lessons learned and why this type of instrument was selected and how it was designed. So when I worked in the Western Balkans, when we talked about innovation, most people perceived it as something tech-focused, startups, potentially people in laboratories. It was quite narrow as a concept. To what extent has this evolved, and to what extent is transformative innovation or non-technological innovation, to what extent are these concepts evolving and being embraced also in the policy making landscape?
Yes, that is the concept of transformative innovation is not well known in the Western Balkans, but we have now actually some change in the understanding of that what innovation is. For example, when we started giving the grants as the Innovation Fund, we were afraid that every project that we are going to finance is going to be some software, because traditionally in our countries, innovation is perceived as making something digital, and that was it. That was something that that they only used to see. But fortunately, the things are changing. And we have some other topics that are starting to be seen as really important for innovation, and there is some recognition that some traditional approaches to innovation should be changed, and that is something that is seen not only by the companies but also by policymakers. So, for example, now at this moment we are talking a lot about that. How should we set up our support system in order to make some new innovation ideas growing, to spotlight on some topics that are not technological and that are interesting for the whole economy. Being a small economy gives you the opportunity to have a good communication between different stakeholders. So that is one benefit of being small, for example, that we can easily gather all the stakeholders, almost all the stakeholders, and open a topic so we can hear what are the others thinking about, and we can actually then set up some instruments that can be interesting for that. So the things are changing from the moment that you were, as you mentioned earlier, also the perception of the people that are part of the innovation ecosystem, and that is true. Really, the perception was like that because you know that Western Balkans were unfortunately well known for the corruption, for example, and that was the reason why nobody believed in the instruments that government have. But now all those things are also really changing, because every country, every economy in this region, we all are trying to set up really very transparent systems, and we use a lot of international knowledge. For example, in the Innovation Fund, our Innovation Fund here in Montenegro, and I can say that it is the same in Serbia, that we don't use local experts for making a decision who are we going to finance for our expert committees. We are too small. And then we started using experts from other regions, from other countries, from Europe, in order to make all the procedure so transparent that people can see that the government is really trying to finance the best. That being the best is something that gives you credit for being financed, and not knowing somebody from the places where the decisions are made. So the things are changing a lot. And that is something that is good. And I think that all the economies in Western Balkans are following that. The pace is not the same in every, but I think that all of us are on the same page when we talk about that.
Okay, once important comment. You were saying a lot Montenegro is small. I wanted to mention that Montenegrins are the tallest people in the world.
Yeah.
Along with the Dutch.
Yeah.
Anyway, good. Bojana, before we open the floor to questions, maybe a few words about the fund that you're heading, why it was established, some of the challenges you've been facing, how you think it's contributing to transformative innovation, what have been some interesting lessons learned about the projects that you have received. Yeah, maybe a couple of minutes about this, and then I'm sure our audience will have further more detailed questions about your work, about your country, about your region. That would be great.
Sure. The Innovation Fund, I mentioned at the very beginning that we are a pretty young institution. We were established in September 2021. Before the establishment of the fund in Montenegro, there was a Ministry of Economy or Ministry of Science, it depends on the government, that was not only making the innovation policy, but also implementing all the support programs for the innovation. And they saw that that is not a good model. So that was the reason why they decided to make the Innovation Fund as a limited liability company, fully owned by the government, that is going to finance all the innovation projects in Montenegro. So that is the main reason of establishment. We have, in these 2 years, we managed to give 10 different public calls for 10 different programs that are supporting innovation. And at the moment, we are supporting all different stakeholders in the innovation ecosystem here in Montenegro. We are working with micro, small, and medium enterprises. We are working with research institutions. We are working with NGOs, for example, with innovators, with some public institutions. So we have different calls and different target groups for those calls. We saw that the potential for that is great. And we saw that, as I mentioned before, we need to regain trust in government institutions. So when I was gathering the team, I was thinking about that we shouldn't be a typical government institution, because usually in Montenegro, government institutions are perceived as very slow, very administrative, and not very open to the community. So we managed to gather a great team of people that have different experiences in the sectors that are important for us. And we became fully operational pretty quickly. And for the moment, we are really very well known in Montenegro and becoming known in the region as well as the institution that is very fast, modern, and we have some corporate rules that are not so regular in the government institutions. We have supported for those 2 years 85 different projects, and we started now. First, we started with some support to regular projects that are connecting academia and business, for example. And now we saw that we should look for some focused calls. For example, we can see that in Montenegro, energy is a field that is very, very interesting and has a great potential. And is not used so much. So, for example, we tailor-made one call to support projects that are dealing with innovation for energy efficiency in the manufacturing. So we started from broad perspective, and we saw that we have enough potential for some smaller niche programs that should be interesting for not only our country, but also maybe for the region at the end. We are all waiting from the Western Balkans for first unicorn to come from one of our countries. We hope that we are going to to make one. And we have very successful projects from different fields, from gaming to some circular economy, for example, in manufacturing and things like that.
Thank you, Bojana. I could ask my questions away for much, much longer. You're such an interesting guest, and it's such a pleasure to interact. But I would like to now open the floor to the wider audience. We have a question from Len. Len, please unmute yourself and fire away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Bojana, for a very interesting talk. One thought occurred to me as you were talking. I was very interested in your use of external experts because of the size of the country, which is completely understandable. But I'm just wondering, what do you come across difficulties then when you're trying to gain credibility for these policies among local stakeholders? And if you do, what type of techniques or mechanisms do you have to ensure that they are credible?
Yes, sure. Thank you. When we decided to use external experts, then we decided to create some internal rule how you can become external expert for the Innovation Fund. So we have a platform where all the experts can register and prove that they really meet all the requirements that we set up in our system in order to be experts that we can use for our programs. And when we started with our support programs, for example, if somebody in Montenegro wants to apply for a grant from the Innovation Fund, all the procedures are in English. And that was the first thing that the local companies were against. They were talking about that, why don't you use Montenegrin language, why we should use English, it is harder for us. But we don't feel uncomfortable to set them out of that comfort zone because we really think and we strongly believe that we should guide them and set up the system that they should learn how to become better in not Montenegrin environment, but in European environment. So we started some new things that we are dealing with, and that is the same thing that comes with experts. When we have different experts, for example, we had in our panels, when we had pitches, experts coming from Switzerland, from Colombia, from Slovenia, from Ireland, Spain, and sometimes when somebody doesn't get grant, then they are pretty angry, and then they can say that they don't understand our culture and they don't understand what is needed here in the region. But we really try to use experts that have some experience in the region of Western Balkans, so they understand those economies, they understand what innovation means here in this context, what innovation means for a smaller economy, and we are very, very satisfied with that, with the things that we get at the end. So we use some, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we have some rules that should be followed, and we only follow those rules. And we, for now, for those 2 years, we didn't have any problems with that. When it comes, for example, to the policymakers, they love that we insist on international experts because they see that it actually helps all of them to gain trust for the government institutions, and they support us strongly in that. For example, we had one program that was launched as the first big program from the Innovation Fund that were collaborative grants for innovation, and we managed to get accreditation by European Innovation Council for that program. And that in the local and maybe in regional environment, that gave us credibility that we really use some procedures that are good, that EU can say they are really good enough to be part of our programs, and that is something that we use when we need to fight back, when we want to defend the position that we really need international experts in order to have good projects funded.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
Jakob.
Jakob, great name, by the way.
You're muted, Jakob.
You have to unmute.
Jakob, you're muted.
Unmute.
You're daily. We learned that you do it once a day, and it usually comes in the afternoon. So this is your hour.
This is my hour. Yes, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation on Montenegro and also the context with your neighbors in the Western Balkans. And my question is, since you are a rather small country with a lot of commonalities with the Western Balkan countries, how do you cooperate when it comes to, for example, in the innovation ecosystem? Since I guess you share the challenges with promoting entrepreneurship and the need to drive a cultural change when it comes to the view of innovation and entrepreneurship. Do you cooperate in an innovation ecosystem with, for example, incubators, science parks, cluster development, and that kind of stuff? And how do you cooperate over the borders in the Western Balkans?
Yeah, very interesting question. Yes, we are all very small, and we should have a very close collaboration and cooperation, and we have it. For example, as I mentioned at the very beginning, when we are creating some new policies, we use examples from the other countries, and that is something that is very common here. So you can see similar programs that are supporting innovation in the region in every country. There was one idea that some regional innovation funds should be formed in order to finance the regional projects, because we are too small for the individual ones. But it was never led till the end. But we cooperate a lot, for example, in some international projects. It is also very common that when somebody is applying for international project, that we have close cooperation with each other, and we work together. And in the recent years, there are some like you mentioned, there are some accelerators, there are some hubs that are dealing with regional startups. For example, we have one interesting example that is not part of the state support, but it is part of the private support here in Montenegro. But is very interesting that one company or one guy that came from Russia, he formed one like innovation hub in Budva, that is one very famous town at the seaside. It is beautiful, so it is famous as a touristic place. And he's working at the moment, for example, with I think 10 different startups coming from Western Balkans. Also, we as the fund are now thinking about that we should make some kind of acceleration program for the regional startups, because we want to focus on one topic. And if you focus on one topic, and we strongly believe that in our countries, in our economies, because they are small, we should all focus on different topics, so that we are very well known for something. That we are known for that not only in the region but also in the Europe. So we are thinking about that we should form some acceleration program on one topic, and we should use all the startups coming from the Western Balkans, not only those from Montenegro. So yes, there are initiatives and there is some cooperation. It can be stronger, definitely, but I think every country from the region, there is thinking about that, and we really see the potential in that, high potential in that cooperation.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Jakob and Dan, for the questions. We have time for one more brief question and answer, and then we will proceed to the game segment. I wouldn't try to call it.
We have to.
So any other questions?
Oh, really? Well, do we have
anyone in here?
this? Do you?
Yeah, maybe.
I haven't, but you go ahead. Lady, no, it's Valentine's Day. I don't want to monopolize. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just a little bit more on your experience in building up this fund over the past 2 years. I was going to ask, is there something that's struck you that you did not anticipate, something, a lesson learned that was surprising to you in your experience?
Yes, at the very beginning, we were surprised about not so many people having enough knowledge about innovation. That was something, when we started, we thought that it is so natural to know a lot about innovation and innovation projects, and to know a lot about forming a project and applying for that. And we came across at the first moment the problem, obstacle that people were thinking at the very beginning, that you should be Nikola Tesla, like you mentioned, in order to get the support for your innovative idea. They weren't thinking about some process innovation, for example, and things like that. So we needed some time to educate our target audiences. And I can say that after 2 years, there is a really strong development in that. Also, one thing that is a problem, I think, not only in Montenegro, but also in whole the Western Balkan region, is there is no enough knowledge about intellectual property rights, for example. And you have universities, for example, that are not thinking about IP policies. So that was something that we had to work on it with them. We had to mention that several times. We had to form so many different promotional events in order to put that topic in a spotlight, in order to make them think about that. So those are some things that we were facing at the very beginning, and we are still trying to do something to improve it.
Very good.
Thanks, Bojana. And yeah, again, it's a real pleasure to do this podcast with you. I now pass over to Emanuela for the game part.
Yes, exactly. So some of you who have participated before might be aware of what is to come. But for those of you that are new to this format, we have been given 3 statements by Bojana, as you can see on the screen now. One of them is true, and the other 2 are false. So I will shortly insert a form into the chat, and we would invite everyone to please place your guess as to which of these statements you believe is true about Bojana and which ones are false. And then I'd ask Bojana to please reveal the truth, and also, yeah, maybe tell a little bit about the background of the statement. So
let's see what the voting comes out.
yes, let's.
This is the fun part.
Going even. There's a preference for statement 2.
Second one.
That's the one.
Seems like it's winning.
Yeah. So that will be
Okay, I voted for you, Ralph.
okay. Okay.
I think the votes are all in. So we have 50% think the second statement is correct, followed by the first and then the third. Bojana, release us from this torture of not knowing.
The second statement is not true. I was born on the Christmas Eve, so not on the February February
That's the
29th.
nightmare. You only get presents once a year. Oh my goodness.
yeah, and I gave birth to my son on Christmas, so we celebrated.
Oh.
And I understand totally when he's complaining about that he should get 2 presents, not only for birthday but for Christmas as well, separately. I'm a mother of 2. I have a daughter and a son. And the truth is that I'm a huge fan of extreme sports. And that is something that is really good in Montenegro. And this was actually the invitation for you to come to Montenegro, because we have really great landscape for the extreme sports. So we have great rivers for the canyoning that is really very extreme and really very, very, very nice. We also have very good conditions for paragliding, because we have a great seaside and mountains that are surrounding it. So when you jump, you jump from the mountain and then you land on the beach, that is something that is really unforgettable. It's really very, very, very good. So Montenegro is a great place for everybody who wish to try those things and who would love to experience that you can come from the seaside to the mountains in half an hour maybe. So that is also something that is good when you're small, and that is something that should be invitation for all of you. And if you want to come, I would be your host gladly, and support you in those extreme sports here in Montenegro.
Well, I mean, this just calls for another question: as which is your favorite extreme sport?
Oh, well, I like jumping from heights. I enjoy that. I enjoy parachutes, and I really love that. That is something that is our nature is like made for it. So that is something that I love the most.
On a more parenthesis there, I can only say that for those who haven't been in Montenegro, I can only endorse everything that Bojana said, because I was there and I had in September the pleasure of being there, and I had one day and I decided I should take a hike, and I considered myself I didn't realize how old I'm getting, because I was going up, and that was in the end it was steep, and I was really tired when I got back. So yeah, I can see the jumping. And to me, just that hike was pretty extreme as a hike. Yeah. Well, this was a very, very interesting. I wouldn't even try to make a summary out of this, because, but I think it proves the point of having this kind of conversations. I learned so much today. Thank you. Also the importance of looking at we're still within the UNECE, but this is a region, we tend to be very OECD focused, even Scandinavian focused, because this is kind of a topic that we've sort of patented for some reason. But it also shows the relevance of having these discussions. I think you, Bojana, are sort of a living example of transformative innovation, because if that is changing the ecosystem, you're really one of a flag bearer here. So, and I sort of lift my hat and congratulations for the work you're doing. I also thought it, as a Swede, I pick up on there on Jakob's sort of interesting to listen to the small country in the world. It is there are so many similarities, which again shows the importance of having the discussions. My sense is we also have lots of people from the Western Balkans living in Sweden. That was the whole idea of having an innovation system outside the country is a very interesting thought, and I think that's not only because it's because of the country, because I think this is how we have to think about innovation systems moving forward when we talk about transformations. This innovation system in exilio, do you always want them back? Isn't it also an advantage of having them outside, because you get tentacles into new markets? And how do you create that link? Not necessarily bringing back, but also working more in the exterior. Those kind of the thoughts that came into my mind. So thank you both for a really good conversation. Next, in 2 weeks, we will have another conversation on financing, and we're going to have another guest moderator then, and it's going to be Victoria Shaw from Tutsi, and with lots of guests. And we were setting this up, so we come back to you with that. No, sorry, I am actually absolutely out of my context. This is actually Ralph is gonna. I'm sorry. You and Jakob, you are the ones being the guests. So here we go. I am sorry for that. We're talking about innovation has procurement. That's what we're going to talk about. You see,
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah.
Pardon?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to being the guest in this podcast. I enjoyed it a lot.
Pleasure.
Me too. We as well, I'll say.
Enjoy the Valentine's Day.
Somebody.